I really like Wonder Man, and that feels like a strange thing to say about a Marvel TV show in 2026. Not because Marvel can't make good television, but because for a while now, liking a Marvel show has come with somewhat of a caveat. You like it, but you have to do the homework. You're invested, but it's really about what comes next. What surprised me about Wonder Man is that none of that applies. I like it because it works on its own. It's confident and it feels like actual television. And watching it made one thing very clear to me. This is what Marvel TV should have been from the start. When Marvel first announced its Disney Plus slate, the pitch was quite intoxicating. These were not going to be side stories, these weren't optional spin-offs. Marvel TV was advertised as essential. Characters from the films could show up at any time, stories would cross over, everything would be part of the same continuous narrative. It was the MCU but without runtime limits. And at first, I liked that idea, as most fans did. Seeing Mark Ruffalo appear as She-Hulk felt exciting. Florence Pugh crossing from Black Widow into Hawkeye made the universe feel increasingly interconnected. The promise was clear though, nothing is skippable anymore. If a show worked, it would be upstreamed into the films, WandaVision fed into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, Wyatt Russell moved from the Falcon and Winter Soldier straight into Thunderbolts. TV wasn't just storytelling, it was the MCU's infrastructure. The problem in the end wasn't the idea, the problem was scale. Disney didn't want a handful of prestige Marvel shows. Disney Plus needed content, and lots of it. So Marvel TV stopped being about storytelling and started being about output. Kevin Feige, who once carefully created a steady slate of films, was suddenly overseeing movies, limited series, specials, all at once. The system that once relied on some patience became stretched very thin. And at first I didn't mind, but very quickly it became obvious that this wasn't sustainable. There was simply too much to keep up with. And worse, the connections started to feel forced. Shows weren't telling stories because they needed to, they were telling stories because they had to set something up. That's when Marvel TV became homework. You weren't watching because you were curious, you were watching because you were told it would matter later. Skip a show and suddenly a film references something you haven't seen. Instead of rewarding engagement, Marvel punished absence. And the payoff rarely justified the effort. When the films themselves started struggling creative and financially, the shows suffered too. If the movies didn't feel worth the homework anymore, then the shows stopped feeling worth it as well. The entire model collapsed under its own weight. And Marvel made one fundamental mistake. They treated television like a long movie, instead of a different medium entirely. Great TV isn't about scale, it's about time. Time with characters, time to let scenes breathe, and time to explore ideas without racing towards a third act. Marvel TV should have been smaller, character driven, and ultimately more experimental. Not every story needs to be connected, not every character needs to end up in a movie, and not every show needs to justify itself through the wider MCU. The shows that worked best were the ones that quietly ignored this assignment. Moon Knight largely existed on its own terms, Werewolf by Night told a complete story. These projects didn't feel like infrastructure, they felt like television, and that's why Wonder Man matters. So why did I love Wonder Man? Wonder Man works because it doesn't care about being essential. It exists within itself. The show is allowed to breathe, it's allowed to be weird, and most importantly, it feels unfucked with. You feel that immediately in the pilot. There's no exposition dump, no one explaining where this fits in the MCU. No dialogue designed to onboard distracted viewers. Instead, the pilot does exactly what a pilot should do, establishing the entire narrative identity of the show. Within 30 minutes you know who this character is, what the show cares about, and the tone. That confidence is something Marvel TV has been missing for years. Then there's the craft of the actual show. Wonder Man looks absolutely beautiful. Real sets, fantastic cinematography, actual texture and atmosphere. And that matters because, as we all know, Marvel projects lately have looked rough. Flat lighting, grey digital spaces, everything feeling like it was finished in post. Wonder Man looks intentional. It looks like people cared about how it feels to sit in a scene. And then there's Ben Kingsley. You have one of the best actors of his generation absolutely killing it in a 30-minute Disney Plus show. He's funny but restrained, he's allowed to underplay, and ultimately he's allowed to act. That only works in a show that isn't desperate to move on to the next thing. This is TV made by creators telling a story, not servicing a roadmap. Watching it, I wasn't thinking about where this fits in the phase, whatever one we're up to. I wasn't waiting for a cameo or a setup. I was just enjoying spending time in the world of this show. And that's why it generally disappoints me that this just kind of got dumped on Disney Plus. All the episodes at once, no real marketing campaign, no actual press tour, although they seem to be doing some at the moment, and no sense that Marvel actually knew how to talk about it. You can almost imagine the executive producer conversations, people sitting in a room watching it and saying, what is this show and who's it for and why are we watching two guys watch Midnight Cowboy? And because it doesn't fit neatly into a box, because it isn't for kids, it isn't built for toys, and doesn't obviously feed into the next movie or the next phase, it just quietly gets released and moved past. Which is a shame, because Wonder Man isn't a failure of Marvel TV. It's proof that Marvel TV can work when it stops trying to be something else. Ultimately, Marvel TV failed when it tried to be essential. It works when it allows creators to tell stories that stand on their own. Television should be Marvel's creative sandbox, smaller stories, character studies, genre experiments, and some real risk. Not everything needs to lead somewhere. Wonder Man doesn't need to become a movie, it doesn't need a crossover, and it doesn't need to matter to this saga. I highly doubt we'll ever see Wonder Man again. Perhaps another series of television, but he won't be stepping into the wider MCU. Marvel needs more shows like this, because the future of Marvel TV isn't about being bigger, it's just about being better. And Wonder Man has very quietly showed them how to do this.